My father demanded $10,000 to walk me down the aisle. When I said no, he promised to sit front row and watch me crawl alone in shame. What he didn't know was that my fiancé wasn't just some soldier. And the 50 men in dress blues weren't just wedding guests, they were waiting for their commander's bride. I'm Doreen Delaney, 29 years old, a trauma nurse at Naval Hospital Jacksonville. And this is the story of the day I stopped begging for love from someone who never intended to give it. If you're watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you are watching from. I grew up in the shadow of my older brother Bradley. That's not a metaphor. It's just the truth of the Delaney household. My nursing school graduation was May 2019. I remember the exact date because I spent 3 hours that morning wondering if my father would show up. He did. 40 minutes late. His excuse? A customer at the dealership needed to close on a Chevy Tahoe. You understand, sweetheart. Business is business. I understood perfectly. When Bradley got promoted to sales manager at Delaney Auto Sales the following year, my father threw a party. 50 people. Catered. He rented out the back room at Marker 32, that upscale seafood place on the Intracoastal. I know because I was invited, as a guest, not as someone worth celebrating. Here's a number that still sits in my chest like a stone, $47,000. That's how much my nursing degree cost. I paid every cent myself. Academic scholarships covered most of tuition. The rest came from 4 years of 6-hour shifts at a coffee shop near campus, pouring lattes until my wrists ached, studying pharmacology between customers. My father never offered a dollar. Not for books, not for scrubs, not for the licensing exam fees. A girl doesn't need fancy degrees, he told me once, when I was 20 and exhausted and foolish enough to ask for help. You'll just get married anyway. Let your husband worry about money. I didn't argue. I never argued back then. I just smiled, said okay, and picked up an extra shift that weekend. That was the first lesson Richard Delaney taught me. My worth in his eyes was measured in what I could provide for him, not what I might become. The second lesson came later, and it cost much more than money. I met Marcus Webb in the emergency room. He came in with a Marine who'd been in a motorcycle accident, stayed the entire 12-hour surgery, pacing the waiting room, refusing to leave until his guy was stable. When I finally came out to update him at 3 a.m., he looked at me like I'd just handed him his own life back. "Thank you," he said. Just that. But he meant it in a way I'd never heard before. We dated quietly for 8 months before I brought him home to meet my family. August 2023. A Sunday dinner at my parents' house in Jacksonville. Marcus wore civilian clothes, a navy polo, khaki pants, nothing that screamed military. He wanted to make a good impression, not intimidate anyone. My father shook his hand at the door, already sizing him up. "So," Richard said, settling into his armchair like a king on a throne, "what do you do for a living?" "I serve in the Marine Corps, sir." My father's eyebrows rose, then fell, then settled into something that looked a lot like disappointment. "Ah, a soldier." He said the word like it tasted sour. "What's the pay like? Enough to support my daughter?" I felt my face flush. Marcus didn't flinch. "I think Doreen supports herself quite well, sir." My father laughed, that short, dismissive laugh I'd heard my whole life. "Sure, sure. Nurses make decent money, I guess." He turned to my mother. "Linda, when's dinner?" He never asked Marcus about his rank, his unit, his service record, nothing, because Richard Delaney had already decided what Marcus was. Just some soldier, not worth knowing more about. And Marcus, my Marcus, simply let him believe it. Marcus proposed on New Year's Day, 2024. He took me to the beach at sunrise, got down on one knee in the sand, and asked me to build a life with him. I said yes before he finished the question. That afternoon I called my parents. My mother answered first, squealed with joy, and immediately handed the phone to my father. I could hear her in the background. "Richard, Doreen's engaged. Our baby's getting married." A pause, then his voice, flat as pavement. Congratulations! How much is this wedding going to cost? I don't have money to throw around, you know. My heart sank, but I kept my voice steady. I'm not asking for money, Dad. Marcus and I are paying for everything ourselves. I just wanted you to know. Another pause. This soldier of yours? He can afford a wedding? Or am I going to get a call in 6 months asking for a bailout? His name is Marcus, and no, you won't. We'll see. That was it. No questions about the ring. No questions about when or where. No, I'm happy for you. Or, I can't wait to meet him properly. He hung up after 45 seconds. I timed it. My mother called back 10 minutes later, apologizing in that soft, tired voice she'd perfected over 30 years of marriage. Your father's just stressed, sweetheart. Business has been slow, you know how he gets. I did know. I'd known my whole life. It's fine, Mom. He'll come around, he always does. But here's the thing about people who always come around. They only do it when it benefits them. And my engagement to a man my father had already dismissed as worthless? That didn't benefit Richard Delaney at all. We sent out the wedding invitations in early April. I designed them myself. Cream cardstock, elegant navy script, a small Marine Corps emblem embossed in gold at the corner. Subtle, but meaningful. The wording was traditional. Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Webb and Ms. Doreen Delaney request the honor of your presence at their marriage. Lieutenant Colonel. His rank, printed clearly, right there on the invitation. My parents received theirs on April 8th. I know because my mother texted me a photo. Got it. So beautiful, honey. I waited for my father to say something. Anything. 3 days later, I called to confirm they'd RSVP. Yes, yes, my father said, sounding distracted. June 14th. Got it on the calendar. Did you see the invitation? What did you think? It's fine. Fancy paper. I heard him shuffling something in the background. Bradley, hand me that invoice. Sorry, Doreen. I'm at the dealership. Was there something else? No, nothing else. My brother picked up the invitation that weekend when he stopped by our parents' house. I know because he sent me a text. Lieutenant Colonel? Sounds impressive. Is that like a made-up military title or something? LOL, I didn't respond. My mother, to her credit, tried. Maybe we should learn more about Marcus's family, she suggested to my father over dinner. I heard about it later, secondhand. He seems like a nice young man. Doreen wouldn't choose someone. What's there to learn? My father cut her off. He's military. They're all the same. Follow orders, collect a pension. That's the whole game. The invitation sat on their kitchen counter for 2 weeks before my mother finally put it on the refrigerator. My father never read past the date. May 3rd, 2024. 6 weeks before my wedding. I was finishing a 12-hour shift in the trauma unit when my phone buzzed. My father's name on the screen. He almost never called me, maybe twice a year, birthdays if he remembered. I stepped into the break room and answered. Doreen? His voice had that tone I recognized from childhood, the negotiation voice, the one he used on customers before closing a deal. I've been thinking. About what? About the wedding, about my role in it. Something cold settled in my stomach. Okay. Walking you down the aisle, that's a big honor. A father's duty, sure, but also a privilege. It means something. It does. Good. Then you understand why I think you should show some appreciation. I gripped the phone tighter. What do you mean? $10,000. The break room felt suddenly airless. Excuse me? 10,000, he repeated, casual as if he were quoting the price on a used sedan. I raised you for 18 years, Doreen. Fed you, clothed you, kept a roof over your head. That's an investment. Now you're getting married, starting your own life. I think it's fair that you show some return on that investment. I couldn't speak. My father continued. Transfer the money before June 1st. Then we'll talk about the aisle. You're serious? Completely. Business is business, sweetheart. You should understand that by now. I felt my hands shaking. Not from fear, from something else, something I'd been pushing down for 29 years. And if I say no? A pause. When he spoke again, his voice was ice. Then I won't walk you, simple as that. But don't worry, I'll still be there. Front row. I want to see how you handle it when everyone watches you walk alone. He let that hang in the air. Think about it, Doreen. I'll be waiting. The line went dead. I stood in that break room for 5 full minutes, staring at my phone, trying to understand how my own father had just tried to extort me. I didn't tell Marcus right away. I drove home in silence, replayed the conversation in my head a dozen times, and convinced myself I'd misunderstood. But I hadn't. The words were clear. $10,000. Return on investment. Front row. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling while Marcus breathed steadily beside me. At 2 a.m., he stirred. You're awake. I'm fine. You're not. He propped himself up on one elbow, studying my face in the darkness. What happened? So I told him. All of it. Marcus listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then, what do you want to do? I don't know. My voice cracked. I hate that he's asking for money, but I stopped, ashamed of what I was about to admit. I'm scared of walking alone, in front of everyone. 187 people watching me, and my own father sitting there smirking because he won. Marcus reached for my hand. You don't need him to walk that aisle, Doreen. I know, but nothing. His voice was gentle but firm. Whatever you decide, I'm with you. If you want to pay him, I'll write the check myself. If you want to walk alone, I'll be waiting at the end. If you want to cancel the whole thing and elope on a beach somewhere, I'll pack a bag right now. I almost laughed. Almost. The decision is yours, he said, but I need you to know something. What? He squeezed my hand. You're stronger than you think, and you won't be alone. Not ever. I didn't understand what he meant. Not yet. But I would. 2 days later, I made my choice. May 5th, a Sunday morning. I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee going cold, phone in hand, heart pounding. My father answered on the second ring. Doreen, good news, I hope. I'm not paying you, Dad. Silence, then a slow exhale. That's your decision? Yes. Fine. His voice hardened. Then I won't be walking you anywhere. You can stumble down that aisle by yourself. I understand. But here's the thing, sweetheart. He was almost enjoying this now. I could hear it. I'm still coming. I'll be right there in the front row watching. I want to see the look on everyone's face when the bride's own father won't stand beside her. My grip tightened on the phone. That's your right. It is. And when this whole thing blows up in your face, when your soldier can't pay the bills and you come crawling back, remember this moment. Remember that you chose this. I will. Goodbye, Doreen. The line went dead. I set the phone down. My hands were trembling, but something else was happening too. Something that felt almost like relief. Marcus appeared in the doorway. He'd heard everything. You okay? No, I admitted, but I think I will be. He crossed the room and wrapped his arms around me. You did the right thing. Did I? You chose yourself, he said quietly. That's never the wrong choice. I leaned into him and let myself breathe. I didn't know what was coming, but I knew I was done paying for love that was never real. The family fallout came fast. My father, it turned out, was an excellent storyteller, at least when it came to making himself the victim. Within a week, his version of events had spread through every branch of the Delaney family tree. Doreen's being ungrateful, doesn't appreciate everything we did for her, won't even say thank you. My Aunt Patricia called first. Sweetheart, why are you being so difficult? $10,000? Is that really worth destroying your relationship with your father? He's asking me to pay him to walk me down the aisle. He's asking you to show respect. That's not respect, Aunt Patricia. That's extortion. She hung up on me. Bradley texted the next day. You're making Dad look bad. This is your fault. I didn't respond. The hardest call came from my mother. She was crying before she even said hello. Just pay it, Doreen. Please. It's not worth all this fighting. Mom, if I pay him, nothing will ever change. But it's your wedding, your special day. Don't you want it to be perfect? I want it to be honest. There's a difference. She didn't understand. I didn't expect her to. I'll be there, she finally said. But I'll be sitting with your father. I know, Mom. That night, I made a list of everyone who'd called to pressure me. 7 people in 5 days. Not one of them asked if I was okay. Marcus found me staring at the list at midnight. They chose their side, he said. Yeah. I crumpled the paper. Now I'm choosing mine. Something changed in Marcus after that night. He didn't say much. He never did when he was planning something. But I noticed the phone calls. Quick conversations in the other room. His voice low, professional, clipped. Work stuff, he said when I asked. Everything okay with the battalion? Fine, just logistics. I didn't push. Marcus had never given me a reason to doubt him, and with everything happening with my family, I didn't have the energy to worry about his schedule. But one evening, I overheard a fragment of conversation. He was in the study, door half open, phone pressed to his ear. I was walking past with a laundry basket when I caught a name. Thornton. Captain James Thornton. Marcus's aide. Timing needs to be precise, not the standard sequence. A pause. No, she doesn't know, and I want to keep it that way. I froze in the hallway. Just make sure everyone's in position. Full dress blues. Swords. Another pause. I'm counting on you, Thornton. He ended the call. I hurried away before he saw me. That night, lying in bed, I almost asked him. Almost. But there was something in his voice during that call. A certainty, a quiet authority, that made me trust whatever he was doing. Marcus had never let me down. Not once. So I closed my eyes and let the question go unanswered. Whatever he was planning, I would find out when he wanted me to. I just didn't realize it would change everything. Maggie Webb called me 3 days before the wedding. Sweetheart, I heard what happened. I was in my apartment surrounded by boxes of wedding favors and seating charts. Marcus told you? He didn't have to. A mother knows when something's wrong. Her voice was warm, unhurried. I also know your father is a damn fool, but that's beside the point. I laughed despite myself. Maggie. Listen to me, Doreen. I've been thinking. She paused. If you need someone to walk you down that aisle, I'd be honored to do it. The words hit me like a wave. You don't have to. I know I don't have to. I want to. Her voice softened. In a few days, you're going to be my daughter. Legally, officially, all of it. But in my heart, you've been my daughter since the first time Marcus brought you to Sunday dinner and you helped me wash dishes without being asked. I couldn't speak. My throat was too tight. You don't need Richard Delaney to validate you, she continued. You don't need anyone's permission to be loved. But if you want someone beside you when you walk toward my son, I'm here. I wiped my eyes. I don't know what to say. Say you'll think about it. That's all I ask. I'll think about it. Good. I could hear her smile through the phone. And Doreen? Whatever you decide, you're going to be just fine. She hung up. And for the first time in weeks, I actually believed it. June 1st came and went. No transfer, no check, no $10,000. My father's deadline passed in silence. That evening, my phone buzzed with a text from a number I knew too well. I see you made your choice. I'll be there. Front row. Watching. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I deleted the message and went back to folding napkins. The next 2 weeks blurred together. Final dress fittings, vendor confirmations, 100 small decisions that felt enormous. I threw myself into the logistics because logistics didn't hurt. Seating charts didn't make me cry. Marcus was busier than usual. Unit stuff, he said. Pre-deployment briefings. You know how it is. I did know, or I thought I did. What I didn't know was that Captain Thornton had sent an email to 50 officers on June 1st, the same day my father's deadline expired. The subject line read, Sword Detail, Webb Wedding, 14th June 2024, 1500 hours. The body of the email was brief: full dress blues, Mameluke swords, rally point, Ritz-Carlton Amelia Island, Grand Ballroom Anteroom, 1430. Timing of sword arch. On lit call web signal, not standard sequence. This is a closed detail. Do not discuss with the bride. Semper Fi. 50 confirmations came back within 48 hours. I didn't see any of it. I was too busy preparing to walk alone. 3 days before the wedding, I was packing my overnight bag when I found it. A magazine clipping tucked into the back of my desk drawer. Marine Corps Times, March 2024. I'd saved it months ago and forgotten. The headline read, Lit Call Marcus Webb assumes command of 1st Battalion, 8th Marines. There was a photo. Marcus in his dress blues, standing before a formation of Marines, the battalion colors behind him. He looked exactly like the man I fell in love with, and also like someone I barely recognized. Commanding, powerful, the kind of man who led other men into battle and brought them home. The article quoted Major General Patricia Holloway, commanding general of the 2nd Marine Division. Lieutenant Colonel Webb exemplifies the leadership and valor we expect from our finest officers. His Bronze Star with valor speaks to his courage under fire. His leadership speaks to his character. The Marines of 1/8 are fortunate to serve under his command. I remembered sending this article to my mother back in March. Her response had been a single text. That's nice, honey. He looks so handsome. She never mentioned it to my father. I never asked if she had. Now, staring at the clipping, I wondered what Richard Delaney would have said if he'd actually read it. If he'd understood that the man he dismissed as just some soldier commanded over 800 Marines. That generals praised his valor, that he'd earned medals for courage under fire. But my father hadn't asked, hadn't cared enough to ask, and Marcus, my quiet, steady Marcus, had never corrected him. I folded the article carefully and slipped it into my suitcase. I didn't know it yet, but that article was about to matter more than I could imagine. The night before the wedding, I watched Marcus take his dress blues out of the garment bag. The uniform was immaculate. Dark blue coat with gold buttons polished to mirrors, white trousers pressed to razor creases, the scarlet stripe running down each leg, the blood stripe, he'd told me once, honoring Marines who died at Chapultepec in 1847. And the medals, rows of them, each one a story I was still learning. I don't think I'll ever get used to seeing you in that, I said from the doorway. He glanced up, smiled. You'll see a lot of it tomorrow. Just you? Something flickered in his eyes. Maybe a few others. How many is a few? Enough. I crossed my arms. You're being mysterious. I'm being patient. He hung the uniform carefully, smoothing the shoulders. You'll understand tomorrow. I watched him retrieve the sword from its case, the Mameluke, with its curved blade and ivory grip. He ran a cloth along the steel, checking for spots. The Arch of Swords, I said. That's a Marine tradition, right? For officer weddings? It is. Goes back to the 1800s. The swords form a passage for the bride, a symbol of safe passage into her new life. How many officers does it take? He met my eyes. Depends on the officer. Marcus, trust me. He set the sword down and crossed to where I stood. His hands found my waist, pulled me close. Whatever happens tomorrow, I need you to know something. What? You're not walking alone, you never were. I wanted to ask what he meant, but his lips found mine, and the question dissolved into something warmer. That night, I dreamed of swords and sunlight. I didn't know the dream was a promise. 4 days before the wedding, my mother called. "Doreen, honey." Her voice was thin, strained. "Your father is still very upset." I was at the kitchen table, reviewing the final guest list. 187 names. I knew exactly which two would cause me the most pain. "I know, Mom. He feels disrespected. He says you've chosen that soldier over your own family. His name is Marcus, and I didn't choose anyone over anyone. Dad made a demand. I said no. But $10,000 is not the point." I set down my pen. "He tried to sell me his presents at my wedding. That's not love, that's a transaction." My mother was quiet for a long moment. I could hear her breathing, could picture her sitting in the living room, glancing toward the kitchen to make sure my father wasn't listening. "I wish you would just be more flexible." Flexible. The word tasted bitter. "You mean compliant. You mean obedient. I mean happy. I want you to be happy." "Then support me, Mom. Just once. Tell Dad he was wrong." The silence stretched. "I can't do that, Doreen. You know I can't." I did know. I'd known my whole life. "Will you be there?" I asked. "At the wedding?" "Of course. I wouldn't miss it." "But you'll sit with him." Another pause. "He's my husband." "And I'm your daughter." "I know." Her voice cracked. "I know, sweetheart, but I can't. I just can't." I closed my eyes. "Okay, Mom." "Okay?" "I'm not angry. I'm just done waiting for something that isn't coming." She started to cry. I let her. When we hung up, I sat alone in the quiet kitchen and made my peace with the truth. My mother loved me, but she would never choose me, so I would choose myself. I want to pause here for a moment. If you've ever had to face a family that put conditions on their love, you're not alone. Drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from. And if this story is hitting close to home, please subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss what happens next. Because my wedding day, that's where everything changed. June 14th, 2024. My wedding day. I woke at 6 a.m. in a suite at the Ritz-Carlton, Amelia Island. The ocean was visible through floor-to-ceiling windows, gray-blue and endless. The sun was just beginning to rise, painting the water in shades of gold. My wedding dress hung on the closet door. A-line silhouette, simple and elegant. No train, no drama. Just clean lines and soft fabric that made me feel like myself. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from my father, sent at 7 o'clock a.m. "I'm here. Front row. Let's see how this goes." I stared at the message for a long moment. Then I deleted it. A knock at the door. Maggie's voice. "Sweetheart? I brought breakfast." I opened the door, and she was there with a tray of fruit and pastries and a pot of coffee. She took one look at my face and set everything down. "Oh, honey." She wrapped her arms around me, and I let myself be held. I hadn't realized how much I needed it. "He texted me," I whispered. "He's here. He's going to watch." "Let him watch." Maggie pulled back, her hands on my shoulders. "Let him see what he's missing. Let him see that you don't need him." "But I'm walking alone." "Are you?" She smiled, a strange, knowing smile. "Doreen, I'm going to tell you something my son told me to keep secret, but I think you need to hear it now." My heart stuttered. "What?" "You're not walking alone today. You never were." "Maggie, what does that mean?" She kissed my forehead. "You'll see. Just trust him." She picked up the breakfast tray and left me standing there, confused and terrified, and for the first time all morning, something close to hopeful. By 2 p.m., the grand ballroom was filling with guests. I watched from a window on the second floor, hidden behind a curtain. 187 people, dressed in their finest, taking their seats in rows of white chairs. The aisle stretched between them, covered in rose petals, leading to an arch of white flowers where Marcus would be waiting. And there, in the front row on the bride's side, sat my father. Richard Delaney wore his best gray suit, the one he saved for car shows and Rotary Club dinners. He was smiling, shaking hands with relatives, playing the gracious patriarch. From this distance, you'd think he was the proudest father in the world. I could hear fragments of his voice drifting up. So happy for her. Of course I'm here. Family is everything. Bradley sat beside him, nodding along. My mother was on my father's other side, hands folded in her lap, eyes fixed on the floor. On the groom's side, the seating was different. The front row held a woman I recognized from Marcus's photos. Major General Patricia Holloway, Commanding General of the 2nd Marine Division. She wore her dress blues, medals gleaming, 2 silver stars on each shoulder. She sat straight-backed and still, radiating a quiet authority that made everyone around her seem smaller. My father glanced across the aisle at her. I saw his brow furrow slightly. Confusion, not recognition. "Who's the lady in uniform?" I heard him ask my mother. "I don't know. Someone from Marcus's work, I suppose." He turned back to his conversation. "Lot of military types here. You'd think we were at a parade." He didn't notice the 2 stars. He didn't notice anything, but he would. At 2:30 they began to arrive, one by one, then in pairs, then in groups. Men in Marine Corps dress blues filed into the ballroom. Dark coats, white trousers, gold buttons catching the afternoon light. Each one moved with the same precision, the same quiet confidence. They didn't sit together. They spread throughout the groom's side, filling gaps between civilian guests, until the entire right half of the room seemed to shimmer with navy and gold. I counted them from my window. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 50 officers, 50 swords at their sides. The civilian guests began to whisper. I could see heads turning, fingers pointing discreetly. This wasn't a normal wedding. This was something else. My father noticed too. His smile faltered. He leaned toward Bradley. "Why are there so many soldiers? Does that guy know the whole damn military?" "Marines, Dad. They're Marines." "Whatever. It's like a recruitment ad in here." He laughed at his own joke. No one around him laughed with him. I watched him scan the room, trying to reassert his confidence. He straightened his tie, crossed his arms, uncrossed them. But something had shifted. The balance of power in that room was no longer what he expected, and he was starting to feel it. From my window, I saw Captain Thornton slip in through a side door. He caught the eye of another officer, nodded once, and took his position near the front. Whatever was about to happen, it was almost time. 2:55 p.m., 5 minutes to go. I stood in the anteroom behind the ballroom doors, bouquet in hand, heart hammering against my ribs. Through the heavy oak I could hear the string quartet playing Pachelbel's canon, the processional music I'd chosen months ago, before everything fell apart. The wedding coordinator touched my elbow. "Ms. Delaney, we're almost ready. Will someone be escorting you?" I shook my head. "I'm walking alone." She nodded, professional sympathy in her eyes. "Of course, whenever you're ready." I wasn't ready. I didn't think I'd ever be ready. But I thought of Marcus waiting at the altar, of Maggie's words this morning, of the 50 officers I'd watched file into that room. "You're not walking alone. You never were." What did that mean? Inside the ballroom, my father was waiting. I could picture him perfectly. Front row, arms crossed, that satisfied smirk on his face. He'd come to watch me fail, to see me humiliated, to prove that without him, I was nothing. The music shifted. The coordinator opened the doors a crack. "It's time, Ms. Delaney." I took a breath, then another. Behind those doors were 187 people. My father, my mother, my brother, everyone who'd ever doubted me. And Marcus. Always Marcus. I stepped forward. The doors began to open. And then, something happened that I will never, ever forget. The doors swung wide and I saw the aisle stretching before me. Empty, rose petals scattered like promises. For one heartbeat, there was silence. Then, movement. 50 men in dress blues rose from their seats, not scattered, not random, synchronized like a wave of navy and gold crashing toward the center aisle. They stepped out from the pews, boots striking marble in perfect unison, and formed two lines facing each other, 25 on each side. The sound of steel filled the room. 50 Mameluke swords cleared their scabbards in one fluid motion, a whisper of metal that became a chorus. The blades rose, crossed, and locked into a perfect arch above the aisle. Afternoon sunlight caught the polished steel and scattered it into diamonds. Captain Thornton's voice rang out. Swords, arch. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. At the far end of the aisle, beneath the arch of swords, Marcus stood waiting. His dress blues were immaculate. His medals caught the light. And he was looking at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Pride and love and something fierce, something protective. He nodded once. A small gesture. Permission. Invitation. Walk to me. The room was frozen. 187 guests stared at the spectacle before them, 50 Marine officers forming a corridor of steel for the bride of their commander. I took my first step, then another. The swords gleamed above me, steady and unwavering. Each officer stood at perfect attention, eyes forward, honoring me with their presence, with their service, with their respect. I walked alone, but I was surrounded by warriors. Halfway down the aisle, I passed the front row. I didn't look at my father. I didn't need to. But I heard him. A sharp intake of breath, a strangled sound, the creak of a chair as he half rose, then sat back down. I kept walking. And when I reached Marcus, when I stepped out from under the final crossed swords, he took my hand and whispered, I told you, you were never alone. I didn't see my father's face in that moment, but I heard about it later, from my mother, from cousins, from guests who couldn't stop talking about what happened. Richard Delaney had risen from his seat the instant the swords appeared. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. What the? He looked around wildly, trying to make sense of it. 50 officers, 50 swords, all of them honoring his daughter, the daughter he'd tried to extort, the daughter he'd planned to humiliate. Bradley grabbed his arm. Dad, sit down. That's... Richard's voice was strangled. Who are these people? Why are they... They're his men, Bradley whispered, finally understanding. Marcus, they're his men. Richard stared at the altar, where Marcus stood in full dress blues, the insignia of a lieutenant colonel gleaming on his shoulders, bronze star with valor on his chest, purple heart beside it. He's their commander, Bradley continued. Dad, he's not just some soldier, he's... I know what he is. Richard's face had gone gray. I can see what he is. Across the aisle, Major General Holloway turned her head slightly. Her gaze found Richard, cool, assessing, utterly unimpressed. Is there a problem, sir? She asked quietly. Richard saw the 2 stars on her shoulders. 2 stars. A major general. The highest-ranking person in the room, and she was looking at him like he was something stuck to the bottom of her shoe. No, he managed. No problem. Good. She turned back to the ceremony. My mother pulled Richard down into his seat. He went without resistance, deflated, diminished. The man who had come to watch his daughter be humiliated was now the one everyone was watching, and everyone could see exactly what he was. I didn't know any of that was happening behind me. I only knew what was in front of me. Marcus, waiting with his hand outstretched, his eyes never leaving mine. I walked beneath those swords like I was walking through a dream. Each step felt weighted with meaning, not just the tradition of it, but the truth of it. These men didn't know me. They knew Marcus. They respected Marcus. And because he had chosen me, they honored me too. That's what love is supposed to look like, I realized. Not conditions, not transactions, just choice, freely given. When I reached the last pair of officers, the final sword still crossed above my head. One of them, a young lieutenant with kind eyes, lowered his blade gently to tap my shoulder. "Welcome to the Corps, ma'am." I smiled, my eyes stinging. "Thank you." He raised his sword back into position, and I stepped through. Marcus caught my hands the moment I was free of the arch. "You made it," he said softly. "You planned this." "I planned this. You didn't tell me." "I wanted you to know." He paused, choosing his words. "I wanted you to feel it, not just hear it. You're not alone, Doreen. You never have to be alone again." Behind us, the 50 officers sheathed their swords in perfect unison. The sound of steel sliding home was like a promise being sealed. The officiant cleared his throat. "Shall we begin?" Marcus looked at me. I looked at him. "Yes," I said. "Let's begin." And as the ceremony started, I didn't spare a single glance for the man in the front row. He was no longer relevant. He never had been. The ceremony was simple. Traditional vows, the exchange of rings, a kiss that felt like coming home. But underneath the ritual, something else was happening. I could feel it in the room, a shift in attention, a redistribution of respect. The guests weren't watching my father anymore. They were watching us, watching the 50 officers who had returned to their seats but still radiated quiet authority. Watching Major General Holloway nod approvingly as Marcus slipped the ring onto my finger. My father sat motionless, arms no longer crossed, hands gripping his knees, face the color of old paper. The whispers had started before I even reached the altar. Now they were spreading through the bride's side like wildfire. "Did you see that, 50 Marines? Her husband commands them, a lieutenant colonel. Richard said he was just a soldier, just some nobody." Clearly Richard was wrong. My Aunt Patricia, the same aunt who'd called me difficult, leaned toward my mother. "Linda, why didn't you tell us? This is... My mother didn't answer. She was crying silently, though I couldn't tell if they were tears of joy or shame. When the officiant pronounced us husband and wife, the room erupted in applause. The 50 officers rose first, a standing ovation from warriors. My father stayed seated. As Marcus and I turned to walk back down the aisle, the swords came out again. Another arch, another honor. This time, when we passed through, I let myself smile. I had walked in alone. I was walking out with an army. If you're still here, thank you for staying with me. That moment, when 50 swords rose for a girl whose own father wouldn't walk beside her. I'll carry it forever. Hit that like button if you felt something too. And drop a comment. What do you think my father did next? Because trust me, the story isn't over yet. Let's keep going. The reception was held in the Ritz-Carlton's oceanfront ballroom. Crystal chandeliers, white linens, the Atlantic visible through floor-to-ceiling windows, waves catching the last of the afternoon sun. We had just finished our first dance when Major General Holloway rose from her table. She hadn't been scheduled to speak. But when a two-star general stands up at a wedding, you don't tell her to sit down. The room fell silent. "I've served 32 years in the United States Marine Corps," she began, her voice carrying without effort. "I've commanded thousands of Marines. I've seen courage and cowardice, honor and failure, and in all those years, I've learned to recognize character when I see it." She turned toward our table. "Lieutenant Colonel Webb is one of the finest officers I've ever had the privilege to command. His Bronze Star with valor wasn't given. It was earned, under fire, saving the lives of his men. His leadership isn't a title, it's a practice. Every day." The room was absolutely still. "And today, I watched him honor his bride in a way that tells me everything I need to know about who he is." She looked at me now, her gaze warm but direct. "Doreen, welcome to our family, the Marine Corps family. You chose a man who will never let you stand alone, and from what I've seen today, you're exactly the kind of woman who deserves that." She raised her glass. "To the bride and groom, Semper Fidelis." The room echoed the toast, glasses rose, applause thundered. I glanced across the ballroom to where my father sat. He wasn't clapping, he wasn't even looking at us. He was staring at his plate, face burning, as everyone around him celebrated the man he'd dismissed as worthless. My father found me an hour into the reception. I was standing near the dessert table, talking with Marcus's mother, when I felt a hand on my elbow. I turned, and there he was. Richard Delaney looked 10 years older than he had that morning. His suit was rumpled, his tie was loose. His eyes kept darting around the room, as if checking to see who was watching. Doreen. His voice was low, almost pleading. Can we talk? I handed my champagne glass to Maggie. What do you want to say, Dad? I didn't know. He spread his hands. About Marcus. About all of this. If I'd known he was... If you'd known he was important, you would have treated me differently. He blinked. That's not what I... That's exactly what you mean. I kept my voice calm, steady. You didn't know Marcus was a lieutenant colonel, so you dismissed him. You didn't know his men would honor me, so you planned to watch me be humiliated. I wasn't. You were. I met his eyes. You came here to watch me fail. You told me so yourself. He had no answer for that. Here's what I need to know, Dad. I stepped closer. Are you sorry for not knowing who Marcus was? Or are you sorry for trying to sell me your love for $10,000? The silence between us stretched. His mouth opened, closed. That's what I thought. I turned back to Maggie, who was watching with quiet approval. Excuse me, Dad. I have guests to thank. I walked away. I didn't look back. Didn't. Marcus found Richard on the terrace 20 minutes later. I didn't witness the conversation, but Marcus told me about it that night, word for word. He's precise like that. Richard was standing alone, staring at the ocean, a whiskey in his hand. He didn't turn when Marcus approached. Mr. Delaney. Lieutenant Colonel. The title came out bitter, almost mocking. I suppose I should call you that now. You can call me Marcus, that's my name. Richard finally turned. His eyes were red. Why didn't you tell me? All those months, you never asked. Marcus's voice was level. You called me that soldier. You asked about my salary. You made assumptions. I didn't correct them because, frankly, sir, it wasn't my job to impress you. Richard's jaw tightened. I'm her father. Yes, and fathers don't charge their daughters for love. The words hung in the salt air. Doreen is my wife now, Marcus continued. She doesn't need your approval to be happy. But if you want to be part of our lives, if you want to know your future grandchildren, you'll need to earn that. And you can start by treating her with the respect she's always deserved. Richard said nothing. Marcus straightened his jacket. Enjoy the rest of the evening, Mr. Delaney. He walked back inside, leaving Richard alone with the waves and the weight of everything he'd lost. When Marcus returned to my side, I squeezed his hand. What did you say to him? The truth. He kissed my forehead. That's all. The fallout started before we even left for our honeymoon. By the time we landed in Maui 3 days later, my phone was full of messages. Not from my father, he hadn't called, but from everyone else. Aunt Patricia, who had called me difficult. Doreen, I had no idea your father demanded money. I'm so sorry for what I said. Please call me. My cousin Rachel. That was the most incredible wedding I've ever seen. Also, your dad is getting destroyed at every family gathering. Just thought you should know. And from my Uncle Thomas, my father's older brother, a man who'd built his own construction company from nothing and had zero tolerance for nonsense. Doreen, your mother told me what Richard did. I called him last night and told him he should be ashamed. A man doesn't sell his daughter's wedding day. That's not business. That's betrayal. I'm proud of you for standing your ground. The social consequences were swift and measurable. Within 2 weeks of the wedding, 3 family members canceled their plans to buy vehicles from Delaney Auto Sales. One of them, Aunt Patricia's husband, had been about to purchase a $45,000 truck. He bought from a competitor instead. Richard's reputation in the extended family shifted overnight. He'd spent decades positioning himself as the successful patriarch, the self-made businessman everyone should admire. Now the whispers followed him everywhere. Did you hear what he did to Doreen? $10,000 to walk her down the aisle. And her husband turned out to be a war hero. Can you imagine? My father had wanted to teach me a lesson about respect. Instead, he taught everyone else a lesson about who he really was. Bradley called 3 weeks after the wedding. I almost didn't answer, but something made me swipe right. Doreen. His voice was different, quieter, less certain. Do you have a minute? I have a minute. A long pause. I could hear him breathing, gathering courage. I want to apologize. I waited. I should have asked you what was going on. When Dad said you were being difficult, I just believed him. I always believe him. It's easier that way. Easier for who? For me? He laughed, but there was no humor in it. I've spent my whole life trying to stay on his good side. You know what that's like. You just stopped playing the game, and I didn't understand why. I stopped because the game was rigged, Bradley. There was no winning, only surviving. I know that now. Another pause. I asked Dad about the money. The 10,000. He said it was between him and you. But I kept pushing and eventually he admitted it. And? And I told him he was wrong. Bradley's voice cracked slightly. First time I've ever said that to him. He didn't take it well. I felt something shift in my chest. Not forgiveness, not yet, but maybe the beginning of it. That took courage, Bradley. It took watching 50 Marines salute my little sister to realize I'd been a coward my whole life. I didn't know what to say to that. I'm not asking you to forgive me, he continued. I'm just asking for a chance. Whenever you're ready. I'll think about it. That's all I can ask. We hung up. It wasn't resolution, but it was a start. My mother came to visit 1 month after the wedding. She came alone. That was the first surprise. The second surprise was what she said when I opened the door. I'm sorry, Doreen. I should have protected you. I didn't. And I need you to know that I know I failed. I stood there frozen as she began to cry. We sat in my living room for 2 hours. She talked more than I'd ever heard her talk, about her marriage, about my father, about the 30 years she'd spent keeping the peace at the cost of her own voice. I knew what he was doing was wrong, she said, clutching a tissue. The money, the threats, all of it. But I was so afraid of what would happen if I stood up to him. What were you afraid of, Mom? Everything. She shook her head. That he'd leave, that he'd turn the family against me, that I'd be alone. She looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. But watching you walk down that aisle, watching you choose yourself, even when it was hard, I realized something. What? I've been alone this whole time, just in a house with someone else. I reached for her hand. After the wedding, she continued, I started sleeping in the guest room. Your father and I barely speak. I don't know what's going to happen, but I know I can't keep pretending everything is fine. Mom, I'm not asking you to fix anything. I'm just asking if... She hesitated. If I can be part of your life, the real you, not the daughter who keeps quiet to keep the peace. I squeezed her hand. You can, Mom, but it's going to take time. I know. She smiled through her tears. I have time. For the first time, I believed her. 2 months after the wedding, Richard Delaney sat alone in his office at the dealership. I know this because Bradley told me. He'd stopped by to drop off some paperwork and found our father staring at a framed family photo, one from years ago when I was maybe 10, grinning at the camera with a gap-toothed smile. The July sales reports were on his desk, down 15% from the same month last year. Some of that was market conditions. Some of it was the 3 family members who'd taken their business elsewhere. Some of it was Richard himself, distracted and short-tempered, losing deals he would have closed easily a year ago. Linda had moved most of her things into the guest room. She spent weekends visiting me at Camp Lejeune, learning to be a mother again. Richard didn't try to stop her. He didn't try much of anything anymore. Bradley said our father asked about me sometimes. Casual questions, dropped into conversation like they didn't matter. "How's your sister doing? She still at that hospital?" Bradley always answered honestly. "She's good, Dad. She got promoted. Charge nurse now." Richard would nod, say something like, "Good for her," and change the subject. He never called me, never texted. I don't know if it was pride or shame or something else entirely, but I know this. The man who had demanded $10,000 to walk me down the aisle was now sitting alone in an office, watching his family slip away, wondering how it all went wrong. I could have told him, but it wasn't my job to teach him anymore. 3 months after the wedding, I found my rhythm. Marcus and I settled into a small house near Camp Lejeune. Nothing fancy, just 3 bedrooms and a backyard where we talked about planting a garden someday. I transferred to Naval Medical Center Camp Lejeune and threw myself into the work. In September, I was promoted to charge nurse. The position came with more responsibility, more hours, and a team of 12 nurses who looked to me for guidance. I'd never led anyone before. It terrified me. But I was good at it, better than I expected. Marcus was busy with the battalion, deployments, training exercises, the endless demands of command. But he was home for dinner most nights. We'd sit on the back porch with glasses of wine, talking about nothing and everything, and I'd think, this is what peace feels like. Maggie called every Sunday. She'd send recipes I'd never cook and photos of Marcus as a child that I'd treasure forever. She was the mother I'd always wanted. Warm, uncomplicated, present. One evening, as the sun set over the pine trees behind our house, Marcus found me on the porch, staring at nothing. "Penny for your thoughts." "I was thinking about family," I said. "How I spent 29 years trying to earn love from people who never intended to give it, and how I found it anyway, just not where I expected." He sat beside me, took my hand. "You found it because you deserved it." Maybe, I leaned into him. Or maybe I just finally stopped settling for less. Richard called 4 months after the wedding. I was in the kitchen making dinner when his name appeared on my screen. I stared at it for 3 rings before answering. "Doreen." His voice was rough, uncertain. "I want to see you." "Okay." A pause. He hadn't expected it to be that easy. "But I have conditions," I continued. "Conditions?" "Yes." I set down the knife I'd been using. "If you want to be part of my life, if you want to know your future grandchildren, there are things that need to change." "Like what?" "You will never again ask me for money in exchange for being my father. You will not compare me to Bradley. And you will treat Marcus with respect, not because of his rank, but because he's my husband and he deserves it." Silence on the other end. "Those aren't negotiations, Dad. Those are requirements. If you can meet them, we can start over, slowly. If you can't, then this conversation is the last one we'll have." I heard him breathing, thinking. "I can try," he finally said. "Trying isn't enough. You need to do it." Another long pause. "Okay." The word came out heavy, like it cost him something. "Okay, Doreen, I'll do it." "Good. Then we'll talk soon." I hung up before he could say anything else. Marcus appeared in the doorway. "How do you feel?" I considered the question. I feel like I finally said what I needed to say, and I feel like it's not my job to make him hear it. He nodded. "That's growth. That's boundaries." We finished making dinner together. Looking back, I spent 29 years trying to earn something that was never for sale. My father's approval, his pride, his love. I thought if I worked hard enough, achieved enough, stayed quiet enough, he would finally see me, finally value me. But that's not how it works. You can't earn love from people who've decided not to give it. You can only exhaust yourself trying. Marcus didn't save me. I need to be clear about that. He didn't ride in on a white horse and fix my broken family. What he did was simpler and more profound. He showed me what respect looks like, what partnership looks like, what it means to be chosen, fully and freely, without conditions. The 50 swords that rose for me on my wedding day weren't about humiliating my father. They were about honoring me, about saying, "You matter, you belong, you are worthy of this." I didn't need Richard Delaney to validate my worth. I just needed to stop asking him to. That's the lesson, if there is one. You can't control how others treat you, but you can control how long you tolerate it, and you can always, always choose yourself. So that's my story. Today, my mother and I are rebuilding. She visits once a month, sometimes more. We're learning how to be honest with each other. Really honest, not the careful politeness we practiced for 30 years. It's awkward sometimes. It's also wonderful. Bradley came to visit last Thanksgiving. He brought a bottle of wine and an apology that felt real. We're not close yet, but we're talking. That's more than I ever expected. And my father? He's trying. I can see it in the small things, the birthday card that arrived on time, the text asking how my day was. Whether it's enough, whether it will ever be enough, I don't know yet. But I know this: I will never again pay for love that should be free. I will never again shrink myself to fit someone else's expectations. And I will never, ever apologize for choosing my own peace. If you're watching this and you've been where I was, trapped in a family that made you earn what should have been given, I want you to know it gets better. Not because they change, because you do. Thank you for listening to my story. Now I want to hear yours. Drop a comment below. Did you choose peace or did you choose family? There's no wrong answer, only your answer. And if this story meant something to you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. I'll see you in the next one.